Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 77.
We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land. It's another week of Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm John Webster. I'm here with Elise Seifert. Hi, Elise.
Hey, John.
When we were preparing, I asked if you wanted to talk about stuff, and you talked about how you've been journaling.
That's right.
And we've heard a few guests talking about journaling. It's something I'm interested in. I don't do it myself, but I've heard great things about it. You sent me an article from way back in May 14th, 2018, 5 benefits of journaling for mental health. It was in positivepsychology.com, and it's by Jeremy Sutton, PhD. So why don't we start by talking about why, or what are some of the good effects of journaling from this article?
Of course. So in this article, it talks about how journaling can really support mental health in various areas. For example, it could reduce anxiety. It can help you to break away from a nonstop cycle of obsessive thinking and brooding. It can improve the awareness and perception of events. It can help to regulate emotions, encourage awareness, or boost physical health.
And just to keep reading for a minute before we turn to more of a discussion, it talks about clients self-reporting. So people who are doing this, what they say it makes them feel, and also some testing says lower blood pressure, improved lung and liver function, less time in hospital, better moods, improved psychological well-being, fewer depressive and avoidance symptoms, reduced stress-related visits to the doctor, less work absenteeism, less time out of work following job loss, and higher student grade averages. Wow, those are all amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, just from your own experience, what some of the different ways to journal are?
I think that you can journal in many different ways. You could be using an expressive journal. So maybe you're expressing how you feel, or maybe you're expressing the events that are going on. But you could also use a journal in a gratitude function. So a gratitude journal, where you focus on positive things that are happening in your life and you record them.
Now, there's another one too, because Michael Herman, who we've interviewed, he told me that when he journals, he just wakes up and writes down whatever's on his mind. He doesn't even direct it at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think he says sometimes he's not even sure what it means when he goes back to read it.
That's fair.
Okay, so there's lots of different ways to do it. Mm-hmm. Lots of benefits. What about you? So what do you actually do logistically?
I journal maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, and I have it on a Google Doc, so I keep it on my drive. I just open it up, I put in the date, and I always start with kind of what's going on in my life. And then it always kind of moves into an expressive journal where I'm talking about how it makes me feel. I started journaling actually as a travel journal.
Right.
And I remember the first time I was introduced to travel journaling was from you.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm actually looking over in a corner over there, and we have a travel journal from, 2002 or something. I was looking at it going, wow, I didn't remember all this stuff.
And it's such an incredible keepsake to have. Mm-hmm. I remember you would ask us questions like we would create a quote for the day, our favorite activity, our favorite food that we had. So when I started traveling in my early 20s, I at first did not keep a travel journal. And then I would come back to Canada and I would think, I wish I had a nice keepsake of my travels. So then anytime I would travel later, I would keep a travel journal. And it always started with just basic activities that I did, or maybe the places I saw. But then it would always kind of turn into an expressive journal where I would be talking about maybe things I was struggling with while backpacking, or things that made me really happy, or just thoughts that I would connect to my life in Canada. So then during COVID, I was feeling a lot of feelings, I think, just being kind of stuck inside, and there seemed to be so much going on in the world. So I started to keep a COVID journal. And it's really interesting because there was so much politically going on that I would just document in this journal and then talk about how I felt about it. And I just found it was such a great release for me.
Did you think about whether to do it on computer or to write it out by hand?
That's interesting. I know when I did my travel journaling, I wrote it all by hand, and maybe that's more cathartic.
I think it might be. So for me, when I was doing the travel journal, it was just, I thought of some kind of fun questions that I thought years from now would be interesting to see. And it turned out that way. And so for me, that could easily be done on the computer because it didn't in my mind have anything to do with mental health or that type of stuff. But I do hear from people who do journaling that they prefer to handwrite it, that for some reason they get more out of it when they handwrite it.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that. I know for me, when I am taking notes, let's say in a class, I retain more of the information if I handwrite it. I think there's something about the physical act of doing it that helps you.
Yeah, I don't know, because for me, I type so much. So I definitely remember things better if I make notes. But for me, it's okay if it's on the computer, but that has more of a memory side as opposed to a cathartic side.
Yes.
Let's get back to what you were doing with journaling. What, if anything, are you getting out of it?
I think it's just a way to get out on paper how I'm feeling and to kind of step past it. Maybe sometimes when I'm feeling sad or sometimes when I'm feeling frustrated, if I just write it out, I think it helps me to get the feelings out and then I can move on.
And did you start journaling because you were hoping for that effect, or did you start for some other reason?
I think I started during COVID because I thought this is such an interesting time and it would be really interesting to have everything that's going on documented for myself for the future. And then I found that it was really helpful for my mental health.
If I look at this list that you read out for reducing anxiety, breaking away from a nonstop cycle of obsessive thinking and brooding, improving awareness, perception of events, regulating emotions, encouraging awareness, boosting physical health. Do you feel any of those things as a result of journaling?
Yes, I definitely think it helps me to reduce anxiety and to break away from obsessive thinking. I know I can do that a lot where I just think about something, but when I get it out on paper, it kind of just lets me get over it. I also think it helps me to regulate my emotions. So maybe getting it out on paper first, I can think maybe, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was, or this is how I can handle it from here. I think it helps me to regulate instead of maybe exploding.
And you do it, I think you said about once a week. Have you thought about doing it more? Is it just a matter of time that you don't have time to do it?
I think it's more when I think about doing it.
So you just do it when you feel like it?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know some people, they like to do it when they wake up.
Yeah.
Others, I think Isabel Sinclair, one of the other co-hosts, tended to do it in the morning, but if she didn't have time, she also liked doing it before bed because she said that that's kind of when her head's in the right space for it as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Now, further down in the article, they're not exactly sure why you get the benefits. The exact mechanisms, they're still trying to figure out why it works. But these are some of the reasons why they think it might help. So emotional catharsis, an emotional release of unconscious conflicts through venting negative feelings. Next, increased cognitive processing, time spent creating coherent narratives of what has happened. Repeated exposure. Increased and prolonged exposure to stressful events may lead to a reduction in harmful thoughts and feelings. And then fourthly, emotional inhibition. Actively inhibiting negative emotions takes a lot of effort. Further stressing the body and mind. Confronting them may support cognitive integration and further understanding. So these are all really interesting theories, and I think a lot of them make sense.
I think a lot of them do too. I think when you were reading about how it helps you to process events, I really agree with that, because sometimes we can be in our feelings when things happen. And then when you actually put it down and think about it, it really helps you to process the events coherently.
I think too, the repeated exposure and emotional inhibition, the thought in part is you're actually confronting stuff. And I remember I was surprised at some of the myths about suicide and suicide awareness and concepts, with a lot of people saying, I better not say anything because it'll make people want to think about that. When in fact, sometimes it's a good idea to ask, are you considering self-harm? And that's with ourselves too. We bury these nuggets as deeply as possible so we never have to address them.
That's right.
But maybe addressing some of our feelings and thoughts can help us actually deal with them.
Yeah. in a way that feels private and special.
And I think that thought too of prolonged exposure may lead to a reduction in harmful thoughts. If you're repeatedly recognizing that you're having these issues and you're getting past it, then when it comes up the next time, it doesn't seem like that isolated as traumatic event.
I think that's a great point.
Okay, well, there's lots of really great stuff in this article, and I'm glad you're getting something out of journaling. I should just make a little fun of Sheila right now because she bought a journal and she told me like a month ago, look what I have. I'm going to start journaling every day. And it's moved from one spot to another spot to another spot.
Yeah.
But so far, no journaling has happened. So
Yeah.
I will revisit this with her once that happens.
All right.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of many areas of wellness. I connected with Joe Ashley through another guest. I found out that Joe's done extensive travel. I'm doing 2 interviews with him, and the first focuses on travel and connections with wellness in general. So welcome, Joe.
Hello, it's really nice to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Fantastic. Joe Ashley is a 28-year-old from rural Shropshire, England, who recently returned to UK after 6 years abroad for a short spell to reconnect with those close to him. Over the years, he's worked many jobs in a diverse array of areas and lived in various places. He's currently teaching English as a foreign language in a school in Bournemouth, England. He's been on a wellness journey for some years now, focusing on mindfulness and meditation, but taking time to learn about many methods, cultures, and practices. He has a strong love of the outdoors and nature and tries to spend as much time within nature as possible. Joe's very interested in sustainability and environmentalism, trying to reduce his impact on the planet as much as possible. So Joe, let's talk about travel and wellness in general. And can I start by just getting a sense of how long you were traveling for and where you went?
Yeah, absolutely. So I first left England when I was 21 years old, just finished university. And what I thought would be a very short trip, maybe, 1 year or something like this, turned into 6.5 years of moving around to different places, finding different jobs along the way. And connecting this to wellness is meeting lots of different people along the way and having very open conversations with various different people from different cultures, different ideas and ideologies.
Okay, and what are some of the things that you found you enjoyed about travel that kept you out there?
So initially it was the freedom, that idea that I could do whatever I felt that I wanted to do in the moment and had that opportunity to explore all of these fantastic places. I'm someone who is really interested in people. I'm really interested in learning about different cultures, different ways of living, foods, music, etc., etc. So for me, it was really important to have that opportunity and that sense of freedom to keep going, I guess.
To me, when you say freedom, it seems a bit scary because when I think of travel, I think, I'm in a foreign place. I'm not sure how I'm going to get by, with the money, with the travel. I would almost feel like I wasn't free in a way. Is there kind of this moment where you realize you're used to being in foreign places and you are free? In fact, you can do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting point, actually, because I see every new place as a new challenge and a new reframing of the mind in some way. So you have that opportunity where, yes, you're right, maybe you're at a bus station and you don't understand the language. You don't really know which bus you're supposed to be taking, for example. But then I see that as a challenge, and a challenge I can bring something from myself to, and also something that I can learn from. And so for me, that sense of freedom is to have many different opportunities.
When I start hearing about that, it does make me think that could give you this feeling of freedom that, maybe I'm feeling constrained because I'm afraid of the unknown. So the more I were to travel, the less of the unknown there would be and the more almost free I'd be to go anywhere.
Exactly. And that's probably one of my main lessons that I've learned over the last 6 years. It is this idea where it seems very scary and it seems something that's very outside of one's comfort zone. But as you start to live it and you start to experience it and you start to pick up little tricks and hacks along the way, it almost reshapes your comfort zone and you start to feel comfortable in that chaos almost.
Oh, that's interesting. Comfort and chaos. I like that. You mentioned that you like meeting people, talking to people, and seeing different perspectives in different countries. How did that impact you when you were able to see people with different outlooks?
I would say a lot of people, myself included, get very stuck into a certain way of thinking and it's very hard to even know that there are other options out there, or different ways to look at a situation, or different ways to approach a situation.
That's a great point.
When you find yourself, for example, in a hostel and you're sitting around a table having a conversation with 5 people from 5 different countries, and you're all meeting in the same place on the same topic, but every person has a slightly different angle, or every person has a very different experience. And that, for me personally, and I think other people I know have a similar experience, it really helps me to evaluate the way that I think and to adapt my thinking to different ideas, different ways of approaching certain situations.
I can see that that's one way that there's this general connection with wellness. What are some of the other connections with wellness that you feel that you experienced?
There's a few that I can draw upon. So I mentioned briefly before that every new place I see is this reframing of the mind, this adapting and having different ideas coming into a way that you would normally approach a certain situation or experience. And this, not just talking about bus stations as I did before, but also in certain challenges that we might face internally as well. Something that I've discovered is that a lot of issues that humans face is very universal. And it's something that can feel very personal in the moment, but a lot of different cultures are experiencing different problems, different challenges, but it usually comes down to very similar origins. And so it's really interesting to see different methods and different ways to try and navigate these challenges.
Can I ask you a question on that, Joe?
Absolutely, yes.
One of my theories, and you can kind of see the pinwheel logo beside me, is that there's many categories of wellness. And one of them is important one, I think, is intellectual. And one of my favorite things to do in terms of intellectual wellness is brainstorm. And what that means to me is trying to be creative when there's problems to solve. So I really like that idea that you're out there, you're meeting people with different perspectives, you're talking with people from different perspectives, you hear different approaches to these universal questions, maybe ones you haven't thought of before. So when you go back to brainstorm about one of these other wellness issues down the road, you're armed with more information and more ability to think of different options.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that completely, actually. And yeah, I'm reading your wheel as we speak now. And I do agree with this idea that wellness does come from many different places. One of the tools that I used whilst traveling is I'd always keep a diary of not only the experiences I was having, but also things that I learned along the way. And I would dedicate a certain few pages to these life lessons, or it can also be very small lessons also. And that's a really good thing to look back on when you say you're having these brainstorming moments, or when you are facing a problem. You can turn to this page, you can see many different ideas that have come through. Maybe I don't agree with everyone, maybe I don't include everyone in my day-to-day life, but they all kind of build up this story or this image of different ways and different angles to look at certain issues.
I love that, especially the fact that you can go back in case you'd forgotten. And I agree with you. You don't have to agree with everything people say, but at least you can think about it and see if it works for you. But I think I interrupted you. I'm not sure if there are some other kind of general connections with wellness that you want to go over.
I mean, there's many different avenues we can explore here, but one I was going to bring up is that I think there is this stereotype of the traveling community as almost a runaway culture and trying to escape from something, or going to find myself, or something like that.
Yes, that's exactly what you were doing, Joe. That's what I'm going to say you were doing.
Well, I mean, to a point, it actually is true, and it does ring true for a lot of people. But I think traveling does give that very unique perspective and that unique opportunity to learn whether the things that you've been struggling about is something that's internal or external. Because you're in a completely new environment, you're with new people, a new place, new culture. And if you're struggling with some of the same issues, it might be an indicator that maybe something internal is the thing that you need to look at, or something that needs to, I don't want to say corrected, but to be challenged.
I often talk about the distinction between nature and nurture, not to try and put too much weight on it, but I think it's something a lot of us understand. And so kind of what I hear you saying is, if you grow up and you stay in one place and you're not feeling great, or there's some issues, it's really hard to tell if it's nature or nurture. You know, that debate rages on. If you go away, now you're not in the same kind of nurturing environment. Now you're in a different environment. So if you're still having the same issues, maybe there is something in your nature that you feel like you need to be addressed.
I do believe it's very interlinked, and there's definitely combinations of both.
Yes, I agree.
And maybe past nurture can influence the way that you view the world today, or the issues that you're facing today. But it does give that unique opportunity where you can be almost on a blank slate in some places and start to build yourself again in a new place, and have that opportunity to explore yourself in different situations and how you react to different situations.
So you're back in England and you're living your life, currently. And you grew up there. Do you see England a bit differently now that you've come back from your travels?
I do. I see England very differently in a number of different ways. I think from a personal perspective, the culture of England is maybe not one that I fit into too much, but that's maybe slightly different to the topic of the podcast. I also used to see England as a problem in the same way that we were just talking about. I used to kind of blame a lot of my problems on the situation that I was in England, or blame a lot of my problems on the culture or the environment of England. And that's one of the reasons I've come back, actually, is to try and address this way of thinking that I have, and to try and take some of the tools that I've learned to then see if it is applicable in a country that I've kind of had some problematic thoughts towards in the past.
I had the experience where I live in Waterloo region, which is about an hour and a half away from Toronto in Ontario. And
I've been to Waterloo, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So I grew up here, and it wasn't until I moved away and lived in many other cities in Canada and then moved back that as I was away, I started to appreciate some things about Waterloo region that I took for granted. Can you think of anything like that as well? That now that you're back in England, there are things there that you're like, this is great, especially like where you're actually from. I didn't realize that this was special until I left.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was very lucky to grow up in a very rural area. And this is possibly where my love of nature comes from. And the scenery is absolutely gorgeous. You can go for a walk for 10 hours if you want to, and maybe not see another human being, which, can be good or bad, of course. So that's one thing. And also, there are many luxuries that we have in England which you don't have in a lot of different countries. And it's really made me appreciative of my own background, my own upbringing, and the opportunities that I had growing up in a country like this.
It's certainly something I love about travel, that you get to appreciate not only the amazing things in other countries that you visit, but you can even better appreciate where you grew up and where you live once you get back. So believe it or not, we're pouring through and we're toward the end of the interview. And
oh my goodness, it does go fast.
It does go fast. Our show is about wellness, and we ask every guest the same question at the end of an interview. It's in the context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. It's essentially a mini wellness check-in. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
First of all, I love that question. I think that's really nice that you ask everyone that question, just to try and turn the attention back inwards again. For me, I've come back to England and I've started working the 9-to-5 life again. And I found that I haven't found the time or sometimes the energy to sit and reflect on my own emotions sometimes. It's very easy to get carried away with an emotion, latch onto it and continue along that path. But I've always found it beneficial to look inwards and find where that emotion has come from. And right now I do find I'm not doing that as much as I would like to. So it's something I would like to try and nourish and grow further in the future.
You mentioned that when you were away, you would take notes of things you heard, things you learned. Was any part of that kind of dealing with these issues that you're talking about now? So for example, we've recently had lots of people talking about journaling. Is that a way to reflect the way you're thinking?
Absolutely, I think so. And everyone is different, and maybe journaling doesn't work for everyone. But for me personally, it's a really good way to get the thoughts out of the mind onto paper, and you can view them almost from an outside perspective by writing them down and revisiting them from a moment where things maybe don't feel so strong.
Okay, so you've told us what you think you need to do. Can you think of a practical way that you're going to do that in terms of getting back to being reflective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think taking the time, especially in that moment finishing work, to maybe even just 10 minutes a day to sit with myself, do some journaling, write about the emotions that I felt throughout the day and where I think they're coming from. Not necessarily tackling them, but just understanding the origin, which I think is very important.
Well, that sounds amazing, and I wish you the best of luck with that. So thanks very much, Joe, for telling us about travel. I've said on prior shows that I'm convinced that there's a very strong connection between travel and wellness. I'm trying to explore it so I can better articulate it, because right now I can't really explain why, but I feel it's out there.
All right. Thank you so much.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. I've been playing so much bass this week, it's insane. I'm having such a good time with it too. Bass is one of the instruments I love to play the most, because unlike the guitar, where I have to really think, or even the piano in some instances where I have to really think about what it is I'm trying to do. The bass feels a lot like singing to me in that I don't have to think so much about the exact note I want, and it's more about what I'm trying to say, which is a really cool feeling, and it can be kind of difficult to describe that difference. For me, I've never had a bass lesson, so the physical technique aspect of the bass, completely new to me. And I was struggling this week with finding the right tone, the right sound, both in terms of the amp and the knobs and the dials on the bass and the amp, but also just my physical finger picking and stuff. I was just having a weird time getting the balance between how hard I needed to pluck versus the fretting and speed and, nasty fret noise and just playing more cleanly. And yesterday I finally had the aha moment and felt very free and was able to shred around on the bass. The song in particular, in case you wanted to check it out, it's very high energy. It's called Overtime by the band Knower. That's Knower. Super high energy, really, really fun on the bass. And yeah, like I said, I had that aha moment. And the reason I'm sharing this is because a lot of people think that, oh, well, Cameron's a musician and he can play all these things, so, he doesn't really have to practice. Totally not true. 100% false. I have to practice hard like anybody else does, especially when it's an instrument that I'm self-taught on. If you're learning something new, if you're trying a new instrument, if you're trying a new skill, maybe you're trying to cook something weird or you're trying painting, whatever it is, keep at it and keep working for that aha moment. Be patient with yourself. It will come. You just can't rush it. If you're looking for some more groovy tunes, if you're feeling on the bass kick like I have been, the other thing you should check out this week is the band Vulfpeck, Vulfpeck. They just put out an album recently, and the whole thing is gold, but the one I've been really shredding on the bass lately is called New Guru. Also on that album, and this song never fails to put a smile on my face pretty much immediately. It's called the Romanian Drinking Song. It's completely instrumental, but if you choose to listen to it, I think you'll hear why it puts a smile on my face. There's a specific mute in one of the horns that just sounds goofy and fun. Not unlike myself. For now, though, that's all I've got. Thanks very much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
Just for fun, I looked up move that body meanings and some interesting things came up.
You mean like you searched it on the internet?
Yeah, I searched it for the internet and then it said
that's how we live now, eh? Like,
yeah.
It's like, oh, move that body. Let's look at it. I think it's cool.
I think it was so funny. So then I thought, and it said other questions, more results. And I thought these questions were hilarious. So let's talk about one of them maybe?
Sure. Well,
if we have time?
No, talk about however many you want. Like, what's a good one?
So one is it good to move your body?
Of course it is. I mean, we have a whole segment every week. It's got to be good.
Here are just a few benefits of moving your body. It releases endorphins. It helps relieve stress. Allows us to take a break from everyday challenges and responsibilities. Helps emotions move through our body.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Which we've talked about before, releasing endorphins. And
yeah, these all sound like solid messages we've heard.
Yeah, and helps relieve stress and yada yada. So we've heard all that. Examples of move that body. How about why do we move that body?
I think we all know that. It's because Let's Be Well Together podcast tells you to.
Yeah,
move
exactly.
that body.
That's what it said here, John.
No way.
It says, moving your body allows blood to flow, joints to move, flexibility, bones to strengthen, and muscles to build.
Before I go for a run, I always do these little exercises that you laugh at.
I do. Because he calls them stretches.
Okay. Well, what I'm really doing is apparently it starts to lubricate your joints. Like you just move your knees and hips and all that stuff.
Exactly.
And I don't really know how that even works, but I hear that it lubricates things. And so you get out there and so far it's worked pretty well. I have no serious injuries in many years.
Yeah, you've been very lucky.
True.
So I just think this is very funny that it has all these questions. How do you move your body gracefully?
I don't know.
Slow it down for instant awareness. Walk briskly from one end of the room to the other. Now slow down your movements. And as you walk back and forth from the room, pay attention to each of these details. Feel how you adjust yourself as you walk, your position, your eye gaze, your hips, your weight, and breath. It is interesting that you have to kind of feel what you're doing and be aware of it in the motion.
Definitely do that when you're lifting weights.
Definitely do that when you're lifting
So what
weights.
other move that body stuff did you come up with?
Is the body made to move?
Definitely.
The human body was designed to move and work best when it's active. We were not designed to sit in a chair or lay on a sofa. Rapid technology has chipped away at our physical activity. Vehicles and machines now move for us, and we work in jobs where we do not need to move as much, which is very true.
I really am struck. This is another really important lesson that I've latched onto, which is our bodies were designed to move.
Mm-hmm.
And if we aren't moving our bodies, we're not actually being human.
Mm-hmm.
Being human includes moving the body. And I'm convinced that in my own mind that not moving my body makes me less efficient in everything, including thinking and all kinds of other stuff. So yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, because that is our design. So we have to use it.
If you want to be human, move that body.
There's a thought. Popped up while running.
Every once in a while, I tell you a biking pop-up instead of a running pop-up. I've been commuting to work on my bike for quite a while now. It's been amazing. And I'm noticing something about my frame of mind, which is better. It started off when I was driving. I have a few options on how I can get to work. One way is probably the fastest way is I go up a street that has 2 lanes in each direction, lots of lights, and that's what I was taking for a long time. I'm one of these drivers that gets a bit frustrated when other people are bad drivers, aggressive drivers, cut you off, that kind of stuff. I'm pretty good in terms of controlling myself and not getting road rage, but it does frustrate me. I was noticing that on the way into work, I was getting frustrated. So that's how I started my day. I'd be out and some goofball would cut me off or cut someone else off or do something dangerous, and I'd be frustrated. So I wasn't having a great time, and then I realized there's another way I can take to work that's essentially a single lane street for most of the way. And so you just follow along, maybe you're a bit slower and you get stuck if there's a bus in front of you, but at least you don't have to worry about all the crazy people doing all their crazy stuff. And that was making me start and end the day better because it was a less stressful drive. Well, I was biking home today and I'm like, wow, this is even better. I take a bit of a scenic route so that most of the time I'm on a trail. And it's so chill. I'm just biking along. I don't have to go hard because I can do my exercise in other ways. So this is just relaxing commute. I hear birds. I see leaves and trees. By the time I get to work, I'm relaxed. By the time I get home from work, I'm relaxed. Anyway, that was my pop-up on the bike, and I thought, this is cool. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
So what's going on today, Sheila?
Well, with Canada Day, having that day off, it reminded me of the good old days back in the good old days when we used to have Sundays off. Nothing was open, and you stayed home and had family time and took care of yourself and rested a little or socialized a little bit.
For those who are listening from far away, Canada Day is July 1st. So we tend to have that holiday around the same time that people in the US have their July 4th holiday. And yeah, what you're talking about is decades ago. There's so many people who won't even know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were kids, when I was a kid, everything was closed on Sunday.
Everything.
You couldn't get pop. You couldn't go to a corner store.
You couldn't get gas.
There might be some corner stores,
Yep.
okay, the occasional, but you basically couldn't do anything. You couldn't shop. And so you stayed home. And it's what's funny about it is back then we thought it was terrible.
I know.
And now we're like, you remember when we couldn't do anything?
Remember those days when you had to stay home and just be with your family and maybe prep your dinners and stay in your pajamas all day or
whatever you did, but you weren't living your life. You weren't forever at your fingertips answering emails and responding to people on work stuff on weekends.
Didn't have computers, didn't have cell phones, didn't have the internet.
No.
You
remember
were
the long
disconnected
cord from the phone? So you'd have for people who don't know this, you had like landlines and you'd have a cord, and most cords were like 3 or 4 feet long because you'd sit in a chair and you just pick up the phone. But the one in the kitchen, you'd get this like 18-foot cord so you could like walk around the hallway and pass it to somebody.
Yeah. Or you could hide in the closet so you can have a private conversation.
These things happen.
Yeah, like they really did happen. And it makes me think that we need to go back to that. We need to go back to forcing ourselves to have a day off.
I hear some people, what they do is they have cell phone free days.
That's an excellent idea.
Or even electronic free days.
Yes, we should try that. I think that's an excellent idea.
Because when you do look back, like I'm not saying, oh, it's a good old days, because probably it's best if you have your choice.
Yes.
But,
and because everybody works different shifts, it's really a drag that if you need to shop on a Sunday, because that's the only day you have off, or you have your weekend is Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever, it's a drag that you can't. So it is nice to have the option of doing what you want to do when you want to do it.
Yeah, it is really nice. Now, though, looking back, you do kind of see how, for whatever reason, it was put in place, mostly religious, I think, religious holidays. In retrospect, you can see the advantage of taking a day off.
Yeah.
Now, are we going to experiment? Maybe we should. I don't know. I can't even I can't imagine doing it. I can't imagine just like not doing anything electronically for a day.
Well, why don't we do it and do it for 3 weeks and then come back on and say how it went?
I need to think about that because for example, it's the only time I work on the podcast. It's like,
You have to do it a different day. We have to pick a day that we're electronic free, no emails, no text, no TV. What do you think? Can we do it?
I don't know. Okay, let us think about it.
Okay, we'll think about it and we'll set some rules.
And if we ever do it, we will report back on whether having a day off works.
Okay, sounds good.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time. It's John here with Elise and Sheila.
Hello.
Hi.
So I know everybody's just waiting with bated breath to find out if I kept my streak alive. I keep talking about it the last few weeks because I've got a bit of a hip injury. And the good news is I did. But the bad news is I did my 10K run last Saturday. It went fairly well, actually. It was a bit sore at times, but felt good at the end. But then, boom, for the rest of the week, it hurt again. So we're now recording this on a Sunday. Elise just got back from her vacation. Boo, that she has to come back. Boo. And I'm going to go out and try it today, but the reality is after this, I have to make a decision on whether I actually have to take a couple of weeks off till I'm feeling better. So I'm not really thrilled about that. At work, I just had another really busy work week, so I don't really have anything exciting to say. We did see a movie this week, so that was good. But the one thing I also wanted to mention quickly was that our backyard, we've been gardening here for a while, and we did a lot of work on it about 5 or 6 years ago. And it's really starting to come into its own. We were just sitting out back having a coffee, and it was so relaxing, and it's so nice to see the flowers growing, the trees growing. It's really starting to feel mature. How was your week, Elise?
My week was incredible. I just got back from an all-inclusive resort in Mexico, and it's been about 5 years since I've been to an all-inclusive resort. So I just had the most amazing week. I think the thing that I loved the most was how incredible the service is. Those people work so hard in the heat, and they're just trying their best to make sure that you have the most amazing experience. And we really felt so grateful to those staff members who helped us to have such an amazing experience. And the food was phenomenal. I think
that's great.
Yeah, especially now with the cost of going out to eat. we were just always looking at our meals thinking this would cost this much and this would cost this much, and we just couldn't believe the quality of food we were having. So glad we had that opportunity, and we had a lovely week. And then going into this week, I'm hoping to have my first open studio time for my pottery class.
So exciting. I actually went to Stratford yesterday and took some pictures of some pottery that I want you to make for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try. Oh man. I know. So I'm pretty excited. So open studio time means I can just go in on my own and work on whatever I would like to work on. So I have some projects in mind that I'm hoping to start. And I know my pottery teacher said once you start open studio, it's kind of like moving out for the first time and trying to cook. And you're like, I know the basic idea and how to get there, but you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way because you don't have someone kind of over your shoulder telling you what to do.
Yeah, but are there people there that can help you?
I'm not sure. I guess I'll find out. It depends on how many people attend. I think there is someone there who's kind of supervising. So maybe if I could ask them questions, or sometimes more experienced people may be there. So hopefully they can help. How about you, Sheila?
I had a great work week. I actually worked more than I usually do. So that all went great. And I had a good workout week, but it was raining a lot. So I had to garden on the one day that was sunny. So I went out there really early in the morning thinking that I'm just going to do this for a few hours. And I was outside all day.
Oh,
yes. Trying to get everything done. But it looks amazing. Like John said, it was worth it. But that was a workout for me that particular day. So that was my big thing this week. We had a great time. We went to Stratford this weekend, which was really nice, just walking around and seeing the shops. We love going to Stratford and just enjoying it. And we went to the movie theater. We actually sat in a theater and ate popcorn. And that's something we haven't done in a while. So that was a lot of fun too. So John and I had a really lovely week, and hopefully it'll continue next week. So does anyone else have anything else they'd like to say?
Nope, all good.
no, that's it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you soon. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.